Hi everyone and welcome back. So the next video we are going to talk about nestjs with MongoDB. So we have already talked about nestjs with the sequelize, nestjs with the typeorm. Now we are talking about MongoDB. So if we compare the sequelize typeorm with the MongoDB, the implementation is fairly simple because this is a NoSQL database and Mongoose is a ODM we are going to use to get the data, update the data, fetch all these kind of operations from the NoSQL database MongoDB. Okay, so the implementation is I do have this particular app. Okay, what we are doing is we are simply writing the controller services and all. Now we have done a lot of demos, so I think like writing this simple application should be fairly simple. Okay, I will focus more on to the what different we are doing from our sequelize or typeorm. First of all, the database module, because this is what is different. If we compare it with the typeorm and the sequelize, here we are going to use mongoose module and a mongoose module options. I mean, and we just need a connection URL which we need in the MongoDB, like MongoDB colon the username, password, host, port, single connection string. Okay, and we are just passing it. So this is a dynamic initialization of a mongoose module and for root async, and in this we are calling this use factory method. And this is the dynamic initialization, and we need it whenever you wanted to inject the configurations from some other module, and here we are using config module to pass on this connection string data. Okay, so this is pretty much simple about how we are writing the database module, and then this database module will be a part of our domain module. So that domain module we have created inside this company folder. If we see inside this entity module, this is like a domain module. So if you remember, if you recall the typeorm and sequelize implementation, we were doing .4 feature, right? Similarly, the same process is here, mongoose module.4 feature. You can see the consistency here. Same naming conventions and all makes it easy for developers to see what is happening. And here we are passing two things instead of one. We are passing the model and we are passing the schema. Okay, and here what we are doing is, if you just see this, this is just an example I wanted to explain. So this is the cat schema, and how we are passing it: for feature the name and the schema, right? If we just look into our code, what we are doing is we have this company schema, right, and company. So inside this company schema, you can define your old way of schema modeling in the by MongoDB, or you can use these annotations. That depends on how you're comfortable with all these things. It's just a simple properties and just a schema, and company schema is nothing but schema factory dot create class, and you pass the company object company class, so it will give you that schema. Okay, it's just a nestjs way of creating the schema model. It can be company, user, courses and all. If you have done the basic express with the MongoDB, then you might already know how to write a schema model. It's just a different way of writing it, but looks pretty much familiar if we are coming from the background of sequelize and typeorm. Now this entity module is saying, okay, I now you can actually go to your service and you can access anything from this company model. That is what we are doing inside our service. This is a company service, and if you remember, we are doing the same thing with the postgres and all. What we are doing here is, I will just resolve all these. What we are doing here is, we are just injecting this company model, and this company we can import. Now we have this model, we have this TTO and all, right? So we are injecting this model and we are accessing the model object. So now you can do the same set of methods which we were running. uh, this dot model dot find by id, find by id dot remove, find by id and update. All these methods we can actually pass. Okay, so it's like get company, update company, delete company, get all company, which is simple as a find method, right? And these are the promise based, so I put await and .exec because this will convert it into a promise, and we already good at writing async await. These all are returning the promises of company or company array, and we have these controllers, right? So I don't wanted to write this code because it's fairly simple. We have already written more complex code than this. These are just a simple controllers like a saying get company, this company service dot get all company, and just return a response. Okay, there are many ways to return a response. If you can simply return whatever you are getting, the nestjs controllers will automatically convert that into http response. Okay, so these are just some different methods we have, like get company by id, update company by id, get all company, create a new company. We are calling a service. Here we are taking a dto. You can add a dto validations, all the same set of things which we were doing earlier. You can do that. Here we might be doing the validation of this company id, because when you want to do a get company, you might be passing the object id. So we have created this validate object id, another class, by implementing this pipe transform. This is just a custom. Why we need it? We need to validate that the id you are passing, that should be of type object id, because mongodb creates the object id for each and every document, and whenever you are doing a update, delete, or get a particular resource, you will be passing object id in the request parameter, and this particular pipe will validate that it is a valid object id or not. That is just you can say the validation criteria on the request parameter. Okay, so this is all about the nestjs with mongodb, and I have already written a lot of applications. You can find that on the github. I will also post this particular code onto the github. This is already using the docker compose.yml. So you spin up, it will spin up the mongodb for you, and we just need our .env file. .env file having all the, I mean, the connection URL at least. Okay, that's it. That's what you need. And we already have a Docker file and all these things which you really need to run this application. Okay, so this is pretty much about what we need, but how to do the integration of nestjs with the mongodb. Now there is a one single collection. You can have n different collections, can define some kind of object referencing from one schema to another schema. You can define the same set of relationship like one to one, one to many, and many to many. It's a NoSQL database, so obviously it's a different. We are not going to create a foreign key and all these things, but it's kind of familiar. Okay, and I have covered in depth about the nestjs mongodb in my previous playlist. So if you're interested learning more about it, you can explore there. Okay, now the more hands-on we are going to do on, let's say, building an authentication and authorization service, simple authentication and authorization service from scratch with the nestjs. Okay, authentication authorization service is simple, which will authenticate your token from the firebase, authenticate your token coming from the auth0, and also provide a role based access control, because we are decoding the payload, extracting your role, and then we will decide, okay, which particular routes you can access, which particular routes you cannot access. So let's connect in the next video for that. Thanks everyone.